Do you want a 30-inch iMac? This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Notion. Do your most efficient work with Notion projects at notion.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. The MacVoices live panel takes on the question and the rumor of a 30-inch iMac. Who is it for, and does it make sense? Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. Mark, you had a rebuttal for Guy?
Yeah, I would say that, I agree. I agree, first of all, with Guy that, these numbers, for a Mini versus the Pro look like they're suspect. But I suppose my rebuttal is that, it may be true fidelity in terms of what they are reporting, because if they found, as Andrew said, that they're doing surveys of Mac users, they may just have very small representation of users of each of those. For instance, I think they reported, this is from memory, I think roughly 3 times as many Mac Pro users as Mac Mini users. So if they only spoke to 2 Mac Mini users, which is entirely possible, but and they spoke to 6 Mac Pro users, that would account for the 3-to-1 error. So again, I think this is really I'll come out and say it straight. I think this is sloppy work on CIRP in terms of reporting whatever it is that they found, and then also not telling anybody what it is that they're actually measuring. So again, I go back to my openness comment that this is just this is a PR stunt, something to get attention. I think in the past we've certainly heard a lot of CIRP surveys reported by Ken Ray on his daily show, where they talk about actual data, I think, which is as measured by web impressions and browser signatures left on different sites. So that's hard data of one sort. This one, they didn't tell us anything. So I suppose I agree with Guy that some of the stuff is real garbage, but trying to maintain an open mind, I think that I think the junior intern who wrote the article at CIRP wasn't overruled by anybody exercising common sense, saying, hey, for these 2 categories, you only talk to, I'm picking numbers here to illustrate a point, you only talk to 10 people, whereas you have hundreds of people in the Mac Pro and MacBook Air and other category. So for that, they should have just, not even had it, or just, created, a bucket for other and just left it at that. So again, I think this is sloppy work at CIRP. And they can contact me via LinkedIn if anybody there is listening. And I'll go into much more detail of how you can help clean up your act and avoid this type of shoddy reporting.
Eric?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. This chart almost sounds like what you would get if you asked a bunch of Mac owners what they think the most popular models are. And then you'd be dealing with Mac owners that had Intel machines, and like an Intel MacBook Air, I would never consider to be popular. But that's not true of the M1 or M2 machines. It doesn't feel like you would get if you were dealing only with new purchases. It wouldn't look like that at all. But if I had a Mac Pro that I'd been using, I probably would consider it to be popular, and the only thing out there that would be able to do what I want it to do. I don't know if I was looking at new machines, I would give that same answer. The same with the minis. If you look over 12 months, I would give a different answer than I'm giving, recently over what we're actually purchasing. And that changed to be almost all Mac Studios over the minis, because the configuration we pick, there's only $100 difference between the two. So yeah, it's I really would have loved to know if these are all new machines, or just machines over the last 12 months, or just what people actually have, or what they think other people think is popular. There are too many questions.
This just feels like I mean, this happens every time a survey comes out or a poll comes out, whether it's tech, political, or whatever. And we all know that they can manipulate the data to say what they want it to. And we interpret it the way we want to. The only thing I'll add to this is that it feels like right now the M1 was the M1, and the M2 was available in a limited set of machines, and we didn't have the higher end M2s. And so I feel like we're in a little bit of a transition phase where people are trying to figure out just how much power they need versus what kind of money they want to spend on that power. And I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with this chart. The chart is what it is based on whoever they talk to. But I know it, I admit, I look and say, gee, I really would like an M2. Which M2 do I want? Or do I want to wait for the next laptop? And which may or may not be an M3. Well, and what will the M3 be? Will it just be a lower power version of an M2? Or will it have that much more horsepower with it? So many variables. Andrew, since this was your article that spawned all this, I wanted to give you the last word on it. Any final thoughts on any of the comments you've heard?
Well, just based on the charts in CIRP's report, I was surprised too when it came to, they're putting the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio at like 1%, 3%. That surprised me because I thought the Mac Mini was like the most affordable, the gateway into the Mac ecosystem, even more. And that chart put even the Mac Pro larger at like 9%, I think it was, for those. So I'm not sure what kind of data other than surveys that they were running with, but even with these more recent updates with the Mac Pro, now that it's on Apple Silicon, I've read reviews and reports on the Mac Pro comparing it to the Mac Studio. And I think I've seen some people saying that the Mac Studio is still in some cases, the better option than the Mac Pro.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the M2 Studio has the same chipset as the MacBook Pro. It just doesn't have as much of the expandability. And there are a few other aspects to it too, but do I have that right?
Well, I think with the Mac Pro, it no longer supports like PCI expandability for external GPUs, I think.
That's right. Okay. Well, I mean, it is what it is, but I thank you for your article. Great article. I think it spurred a lot of conversation here, and we will see what happens. And we want you to write the next great article so you can come back next week and talk about it.
Thank you.
So the next thing I had queued up here, I'll take that out. And we do not usually talk about rumors here. It's usually a waste of time. However, there's some commentary out there right now that Apple's readying an iMac that is 30 inches or larger. And that seemed to factor in well. David kind of referenced that a little bit when he was making his comment. But I want to look to Jeff because Jeff is a big monitor guy. And so, Jeff, do you see a 30-inch or better iMac being realistic?
Nope.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I don't even have to think about that one, but I'll think about it for a second. Nope.
Okay, so why not?
The markets that Apple goes for with the iMac, 27 inches to me looks like the high end for screen space sweet spot. And when you're getting larger than that, now you're getting something that is an all-in-one computer, starts to become kind of unwieldy. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head if HP or anyone in that space is making a a 30-inch all-in-one.
Didn't Microsoft have a 32-inch at one point? Their Studio,
Oh,
the Surface
yes.
Studio.
Yes, they had the 32-inch Studio, was the whole touchscreen thing, and it was really beautiful.
They sold at least 2 of them. Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there were a lot of things that were an issue with that Studio that probably wouldn't apply to an iMac. Yeah, my office manager is suddenly very interested in the show. The iMac is a product that Apple wants to sell in volume, unlike the Mac Pro, which is something they are totally fine selling in small amounts, almost like a boutique device.
Yeah.
When you go 30 inches with an iMac, you're going into a space where the device itself becomes kind of unwieldy, and the price point goes out, I think, of that market that Apple shoots for with the iMac. I am not seeing a 30-inch iMac.
Okay, Brian?
I would say I use the 27-inch iMac right now, the last of the Intels, and if they do end up making that 30-inch iMac, just looking at the bezel on the monitor, I bet you it'd be about that same footprint size, as you're going to remove that bezel, and it'll take up the screen size. Will take up most of the room.
So do we need a 27-inch refresh, or have we entered a period where, because the Mini was sort of the desktop item of choice, and if you wanted a bigger monitor, you needed to buy a bigger monitor. Didn't make a lot of sense to buy a 21-inch iMac and then have to buy a second monitor for it. So most people went with the Mini and bought whatever monitor they wanted. So what does that do to the 27-inch iMac? Webb, you've been very quiet all evening. What, you got to have some thoughts on this.
A couple things. Remember, when the Intel iMac came out, remember they did have two sizes, the 24 and 27, or they had 2 sizes at one point.
21.5 and 27.
Thank you. And could I see it? Yeah. Is it something that excites me? No, but quite honestly, I'm not too excited about the new iMac line anyway. It's just doesn't excite me. It's too thin. It's really geared as a consumer device, I guess, and that's why I don't get too excited about it. But I could see it. I could see them coming out with a dual line, but like Jeff, I don't know if it's going to be a real big mover. So
I don't know. I mean, I go to the Apple store and I look at the iMacs right now, and they're fine and they're nice. And of course the screens are gorgeous, but I feel like I want more screen real estate. The 27 probably is the sweet spot. And I say that only because right up until a few weeks ago when my Fusion drive died, that's what was sitting in front of me for these shows. So, would a 30 be bad? And Jeff, what do you have a 34? Do I have that right?
Yes, I have a 34-inch display. Part of what makes this display really usable for me is that it's easy to put on a Visa mount. And my feeling is when you start getting into larger displays, like larger than 27 inches, getting the display up off the desk on an arm makes a huge difference in usability.
Okay, Britt?
Okay, first, my editor would kill me if they came out with it because I assured him they weren't going to, and that's why I got a Studio. But seriously,
also, hi,
good,
Derek.
there's some really good reasons not to. For example, people who bought beautiful 5K iMacs and that computer is no longer up to date, and there's this gorgeous display that just collects dust because they can't do anything with it. By combining these fancy end items. You can't have them separate. There's no more target display mode. We could discuss whether or not there should be. But because there isn't that, you add this complexity by having the two things together. Whereas when they're separated, when one is outdated, the other can still be used.
I feel like the iMac Pro is going to rest in peace. Everybody who has a soft spot in their heart for one, pour one out. Because that's not happening. If you want one, it's called the Mac Studio, and it can be whatever size screen you want. Because people who were doing that in the first place, who wanted that 5K screen, who wanted, that extra resolution for whatever it was that they were doing. First of all, when that screen came out, there were not a lot of other options if you needed something that was more than 1080p. And I just want to back up, Jeff, as a person with two 27-inch displays attached to my desk, not upon my desk. That would not be possible if it were not for the magical arm that holds them up. So I don't have to have all that acreage on my desk taken up by stands. I think the Studio is what takes the place of the iMac Pro. I think we will get refinement in the iMac line. I think maybe we will get 24s that are like an inch bigger physically than what we get from the iMac now or something, because they'll rejigger the bezels or whatever, like they do with the laptops occasionally. Like we have a 13 and a 14 and a 15 and a 16. And, between the 13 and the 14, like that size isn't dramatically different when you look at just the height and the width. I know they're thicker, because I know that the Pro is a slab, but when you look at just what the physical, height and width of that machine are, they're not dramatically different to get that extra inch of screen size, because they just made the border a little bit less. And so now you get a little bit sleeker machine and a little bit more screen real estate. So I could see like a 27-inch iMac. We've seen it before. So I think we could get something like, now it's 24 and 27, just like if you want to go look at a monitor on Amazon, the most common sizes you will see are 24 and 27. I could see that happening from a supply chain perspective, because those are common dimensions and it's very easy to get displays in those particular sizes that are IPS, which is what iMacs, and nano IPS, what that display technology looks like with the OLED light, lighten up the back. I could absolutely see that being a possibility, that it just gets adjusted, maybe not completely revitalized. I don't think the lampshade's making a comeback or anything like that. But that would be awesome, but I just don't see it. I could absolutely see, it's very common to get displays in these sizes at this technology that makes them really pretty. But I could also see it just as easily going the other way, where, you get a mini and a coupon to go buy a better screen from somebody else, because Apple doesn't want to be in the big ass display game anymore. Sorry, Chuck. That kind of, I could absolutely see it being a very easy thing for them to do, to just give it a slight adjustment and not rebuild it from the ground up.
Eric?
I could see maybe a 32-inch iMac Pro, something that they wouldn't expect to sell in huge numbers. I don't think we'll see a 27-inch iMac. It doesn't really make any sense anymore. Personally, if I had to buy something, I'd get the 27-inch Studio display and Apple Studio machine, because I can hang on to the display for a while, swap out the Studio as soon as the M3 comes out, plop that in place, and keep rotating through. That makes a whole lot more sense. But there are a few places where having an all-in-one machine is just easier to manage, and you can put those on a mount on a desk if you need to. But I don't see it being something you would sell in high numbers, and the iMac Pro wouldn't be expected to sell in as high numbers as the iMac. I think the 27-inch iMac is gone. I think that's effectively the Apple Studio and the Studio display.
Today's Mac Voices is supported by Notion. Do your most efficient work with Notion projects at notion.com/MacVoices. Project management tools are supposed to help you move faster and stay organized. The funny thing is, most are so complex that you try not to use them. When you do, You're usually flipping between 50 tabs or worse, several apps just to do your job. You clearly haven't found the right tool yet. That's why, today, I'm excited to share that Notion has just launched Notion Projects, which includes new, powerful ways to manage projects and leverage the power of their built-in AI features too. Notion Projects combines project management with your docs, knowledge base, and AI feature too, so you can stop jumping between tools and stop paying too much for them too. One workspace that includes everything you need, from brainstorming to drafting launch plans, to organizing sprints, and keeping everyone on deadline. And Notion can be customized to work the way you like to work, with timelines, tables, or Kanban boards. And did I mention integrated AI? Do your most efficient work with Notion projects. You can try it for free today at notion.com/MacVoices. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/MacVoices. When you use my link, you're supporting my show. Go right now to notion.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Notion for supporting MacVoices. Andrew, if you had a larger studio display, though, how realistic is it given the price that we're seeing for the current studio as compared with, admittedly, lesser quality, less sophisticated 4K monitors that are also a whole heck of a lot cheaper?
Right. The only thing that was just my first thought was maybe it was the studio display that maybe get bigger rather than the iMac. I'm not really sure, but I agree with you all that it sounds like the Mac Studio is kind of Apple's focus for the Mac going forward, at least right now. And they may be developing more technologies and accessories to that. And hopefully that would get a better screen.
David?
Yeah, I'll add on to the monitor experience. The sweet spot in companies is a 27-inch, 24, 27. We're doing 20. I think a lot of companies are doing 24-inch, but I think 27 has really become a real sweet spot. But the curved monitors are becoming just quite the phenomenon with the business user. I mean, people are really liking the 32s and the 34s. They're 4K. They give you good real estate, saves up less space because everybody's got two monitors sitting on their desks. Trying to move between the two, whether it be 27s, 24s. Those 32s and 34s can get very heavy on the arms too, because they got some pretty serious weight to them. But so looking at those monitors, you're either going to sit on a stand on your desk, and I agree with you at 100%. I mean, having a monitor up high and on a monitor, you really have to have it that way, because it's just, I ended up buying a stand to put under my 32-inch monitor I'm looking at with you guys right now. So I'm really liking the fact that it's I'm a little higher up and giving me a good level here. But to spin it back to the iMac, I'm really kind of agreeing with pretty much the entire panel here. The fact that I don't see them going into the big size screens anymore. It just really isn't a thing. I mean, you got the Mac Studios, you got the Mac Pro. You can get whatever monitor you so wish. It doesn't have to be an Apple Studio display, as much as we would love it, and it's a beautiful monitor, but it's pricey. And my experience with Dell monitors is the fact that they're Ultra Sharp series, and a lot of those monitors. And we had this bit of the debate in our Slack room earlier this week about what was a good sweet spot on those monitors. And I think the 32s and 34s are pretty sweet, and I think those are perfectly fine for most people, unless you're serious editing. So you're doing some serious graphic arts, that kind of thing. Even so, I've seen people have those Dell monitors and been very, very happy with them. And it's by half the cost.
Guy, I have a comment after yours, but I'll let you go first.
All right, 32 on iMac, not going to happen. If you think back to when the bigger iMacs were around, the 27-inch iMacs, the Mac Mini had not been updated in a few years, and it was between 2014 or 2013 and 2018 before there was a serious upgrade to them. And the iMac
in both the 21.5 and the 27-inch was the consumer model that Apple was putting out for the Mac. Well, that's no longer the case. You have the Mac Mini, you have the Mac Studio, and frankly, most people are buying laptops these days anyway, and if they need more real estate, attaching an external monitor to them. We no longer need a 32-inch iMac, and I just can't see Apple, unless there was some compelling reason and some piece that was missing in their product line, and it's not missing. I just can't see a 32-inch iMac ever being made.
Okay. I'm going to change my comment to a question, and I'll ask for a show of hands. So how many people here, let's see, are using a 24-inch monitor, 24 or smaller? Brittany? What was that?
I didn't know how to answer the question. I mostly just am on my laptop, so that is technically smaller than that. But if I do plug in, it's bigger. So
okay, well, no, that's fair. So your laptop is your primary screen.
Yeah.
Okay,
which is why I got a big ass computer.
Right. So
a back.
I don't remember seeing that in the product descriptions.
Read the fine print, Chuck.
Yeah, it was one of the configurations.
Big ass laptop with the Max processor.
Good, better, best.
It's
big
not
ass.
that fine.
Yeah.
So is anybody else using the laptop as their primary screen other than Brittany? Okay. Oh, Andrew? Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are your daily drivers as far as not just the computer itself, but the screens.
I have been known to use the primary screen on my computer as the primary screen. Like daily driver at the day job, that is not that it has happened. It is not the standard configuration.
Okay, so then let's go to 27. How many people are using a 27? Okay, what was that, guy?
2. I have 2 27-inch monitors on Visa mounts on floating stands.
Okay, that's where I was going to go next. Is how many people are using more than one? Are using 2 24s or 2 27s?
2 27s.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 27s.
132.
Yeah, and who said 132?
I have 132.
Mark.
David, Mark, and Jeff are doing things that are. Oh, and Jim too. Okay.
And I have a 27 as a secondary machine for other work. So when I'm looking at you right now, I have my 32 here and my 27 next to me on the right, on my right.
Okay. All right.
So is my 34-inch the biggest?
You are.
Not that anyone needs to brag or anything.
Well, you do.
Jeff wants to measure.
It's not that big when it's cold.
Okay, fair point.
It's not the size, it's how you use it.
That's right.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I think I can challenge you because.
Uh-oh.
It's not after dark, Chuck. It's not after dark.
Pull away from the dark side, Chuck. Pull away.
What I'm hearing, Chuck, is it's a good thing I have a widescreen display.
Yeah.
So it's
I went to 327s, 327 4Ks, and I absolutely love it. So
excuse me while I whip this out.
Okay. All right. Mark, before this started downhill, I agreed to give you the last word. So if you still want it, it's yours.
Sure. I'm listening to the panelists, and they all make interesting points and comments. I'm trying to square this, with my own experience. About a dozen years ago, I was spending a lot of time with the creative set. Several visits to Pixar, as well as different studios down in around Burbank and other areas in SoCal. And what I saw just does not square with what I hear people here talking about. I saw at Pixar, every office seemed to have 1 or 2 arms with an iMac on it. So I think those things would be very attractive, for corporate settings, because again, it's one system, one configuration. It's easy. If something dies, you pop out another one from spares. I think smaller companies may be more inclined to, want to buy, a Mac Studio and try to get an appropriate set of monitors to hook up to it. But, I think for a corporate market, there's a lot of appeal to that. And then I guess my final comment is ultimately we don't know. We're speculating. We're pulling out maybe numbers and opinions from where we sit down, because I'm got to believe Apple knows, their user base and potential, sales and business demand way better than any of us here on this panel. And if they think there's a demand for that, they will come out for it, and if the thing is optimized at 30 inches or 32 inches or maybe 29 inches, they will do that, but until then, I think as Chuck's poll indicated, there is a demand out there for larger monitors. So, I guess the closing question for everybody is, if there's a big market demand out there, do we think Apple will not, try to address it and make money off of it? And as, Betteridge's Law, any question that, somebody will write a blog post or, post on the New York Times or Washington Post, any question that ends with a question mark, the answer is no. So, I think Apple, all-time high today, they're damn good business people. So I'm not saying they're coming out with something. I'm just saying if there's sufficient demand out there, I would not be surprised. And ultimately, there's got to be some sort of, I think, basis in fact, because I don't think Mark Gurman, to whom a lot of these stories seem to trace back, I don't think he hallucinates and just invents stuff. So he seems to have an inside track, of what Apple is thinking or maybe prototyping. And again, we know they prototype more than they bring to market. So all I would say is, I think there's a little bit of smoke there. I think there's some flames and kindling. And let's come back in a year or two and see what happens, because isn't it supposed to be a 2025 product announcement?
Thank you, Mark. And I lied. I'm not going to give you the last word. I'm going to give the last word at least partially to the chat room, because just to catch up a little bit, they were contributing. They said, Ben said he has a 14.2 and a 15.6. Barry says 224s at work, 124 and 127 at home. So, interesting. But Mark, between you and Jeff, you just made me think of something that I really hadn't contemplated before. Jeff's comment about being able to put things on the Visa mount, and the idea that you want desktop space, but you also want screen real estate. A larger iMac might solve that. I think Barry did say in the chat too, I missed this one, there's a market for a larger iMac. His dad has a 27-inch Intel. He wanted to go to an M1, but didn't want to downsize his monitor. So
there's absolutely a market for that. However, the question that Apple has to sort out, and I think they have, is there a market large enough to make it worth making that size computer? Yep. And I believe the answer is no, which sucks for the people that want that computer. And I think the same goes for the 27-inch iMac. If the market was there for that computer, we would have an M series 27-inch iMac right now, and we don't. Therefore, the market is not there.
That's probably the best point of all.
That's what everybody said about Apple making a monitor, though. Oh, Apple, they must know that there's no market. They're never going to make a monitor. We heard that for years and years and years and years. So
Apple said they weren't going to make monitors anymore. This wasn't just people speculating. They said they were out of the monitor business.
But is an iMac a monitor? I mean, it's a single standalone computer. So let's parse.
They also made two monitors after that. I'm just saying, people said they were out of it. They didn't say it because they were speculating.
Well, it's an Apple branded monitor.
They're number one. Everything they sell that sells an appreciable percentage of Apple products in one way or another has a screen. So just saying. Maybe they don't want to make their own individual units anymore, but virtually everything they sell that makes them money has a display attached.
No. Now they do make two different monitors. So they seem to have changed their whole thinking on that, and who knows, they may change their thinking again. I don't know. I personally never understood the all-in-one. Why would you want an expensive monitor tied up with a computer that you're going to replace? And I've never owned an all-in-one, but they were clearly very popular for a long time. They were clearly very popular for a long time, and so my thinking was wrong. But who knows?
Jim, I agree with you completely on that point, and I was wrong too, because listen, I bought them, I loved them, but it always stung just a little bit to have to be replacing the monitor when I wanted to upgrade the computer, since they were all in one. But on the other hand, that's what everybody was doing. And maybe it was because there wasn't a great option for a desktop machine.
No, there wasn't. That's what I was talking about with the Mac Mini. The Mac Mini hadn't been updated in a long time. So if you wanted a powerful Apple desktop machine, you had to go with an iMac. Or you had to scoot all the way up to a Mac Pro.
For years, there was all this.
That's no longer the case.
Yeah. Remember the X Mac that people wished that they would come out with, which is basically a Mac Studio, or maybe a Mac Mini. So and everybody was like, well, they're never going to do that. Apple does not. They're out of that business of componentized computers, and they just make all-in-ones. Times change.
This MacVoices Live panel is back next time to finish up our conversation about a large screen iMac. Then we take a look at something that makes Apple Keynote videos special, what's going on with Reddit, and more. That's next time on MacVoices. I'll see you then. As always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.